From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, and welcome to Space Brains, the show where we watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya, it's episode 87, and we are talking about science fiction film The Salute of the Jugger. Came out in 1989. In this episode, we'll reveal what we thought about the film, the ins and outs of narrative and film language, plus a nice deep dive into Rutger Hauer's eyeballs.
At least one of them.
One of them, yeah, that's right. Well, half the film. You only paid half price for this film. You get one eyeball.
One.
And we'll probably talk about some sort of science along the way. I think Surrey will delve into some.
So it'll be gruesome science.
Gruesome science, cool. Now, this film brings Rutger and David Webb Peoples back into the same room because he's the scriptwriter of Blade Runner.
I didn't pay attention to that when we did Blade Runner,
Yeah.
and when we did this one, it was just coincidental.
Well, yeah, for us, I think this is one of those examples of, you know, a screenwriter going, ooh, Rutger's bloody good. I've got to get him back in front of the camera, don't you reckon? Okay. David Webb Peoples only has directed a couple of films, this being one of them, but he is the scriptwriter of Blade Runner, another science fiction film, 12 Monkeys, and the TV series of 12 Monkeys that's around now. Plus, he's also got an Oscar nomination for the Western, Unforgiven. And quite often they do say sci-fi and Westerns are very similar, don't they? Sorry.
Some more so than others if you look
just
at
the elements have
Battle
changed.
Beyond the Stars and Star Wars, but...
Yeah.
He did a whole bunch more. There was one, Leviathan, which was during the popular time of let's have an underwater sort of spooky one.
Yeah.
And that had, what's that guy's name from RoboCop? Had RoboCop before he was RoboCop. Peter Weller.
Peter Weller, oh,
yes.
Yeah.
There you go. So look, anyway, before we go any further, This is your spoiler warning. Turn back now. Watch the film. It is a bit challenging to find, but if you do enough searches, you will eventually find some sort of a link to get this thing.
And it does depend where you are, because you can get it really easily in the US.
In the US, it's still around.
So if you're listening in the US,
it was filmed in Australia, released in Australia, but
it's hard to get in Australia.
It's on VHS here apparently. Yeah. But anyway,
probably should have gone op shopping for it. Actually,
go watch the film and then tune back in and then hear about how in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Yes.
See, I had to look that up from Minority Report. We're stumped by that one.
Oh, you've just given me, there was eyeballs in Minority Report and there's eyeballs in Salute of the Jugger.
Yes, because here's your first spoiler, as we kind of hinted at.
Oh, we've already warned you.
Sallow lost one of his eyes.
He does.
And
he does.
Yes.
He didn't have them nicely surgically removed by the creepy surgeon like Tom.
No.
In Minority Report. In this one, they
belted
just
out of him.
out of it. That's right. And he's just so accepting of his fate, isn't he, in this film?
No, one must. He wants to be king in the land of the blind.
That's right. So what was your... Oh, no, hang on. Salute of the Jugger. It's also known as...
The Blood of Heroes.
Yes, that's what it is in the US, in Australia, Salute of the Juggers, and in other parts of the world. Who knows? Let us know. What is this film called where you come from? Send us a message. This is in the future, not unlike Mad Max. Now, we haven't looked at Mad Max yet, but it's a very Mad Max world. It's post-apocalyptic.
Lord Vile in this film, the actor is from Mad Max.
He is.
And Fury Road.
Yes,
he is Joe Immortal from Fury Road.
And
he's got a bit of a career in post-apocalypse.
he was what they call that, typecast. He's stuck in that role.
There you go.
There's another post-apocalyptic film. Oh, come on, I want to do a Christmas movie. Yeah. Can't you get me anything, Agent?
Post-apocalyptic Christmas.
Okay, yeah, sign me up. So in the future where most of mankind and technology is wiped out, 6 people travel from place to place playing a brutal form of, I don't know if it's football or, I don't know, whatever the hell it's called.
Dog skull ball.
Dog skull ball, yeah. And they use a dog skull and they slam it on a stick. And they hope to one day play in the league, in the big leagues, in the big city.
And get silk.
And get silk.
They're very excited by silk.
They are. Which is actually a really nice touch, isn't it? That, you know, like it would be something like silk would be very fascinating to the sort of poor people out in the wastelands, I think, in this particular world. What was your number one takeaway from Salute of the Jugger?
Look, this is just to be a little bit of a downer here, but what really struck me in the Salute of the Jugger, my number one takeaway, is that sport is still used even in the post-apocalypse.
Oh, yeah. It will never go away.
It's still used to sort of give poor people some sort of a hope while simultaneously oppressing them. And it's like, you look at these films and you can also draw parallels with, say, the Hunger Games, where it's seen as this, like a lot of, in the Hunger Games, a lot of the districts, and I hope I'm not spoiling this for anyone, but a lot of the districts sort of see the Hunger Games as this amazing thing, you know, and if you win and you become one of the winners, it's like, wow, my goodness, you're so good.
Yeah.
But in reality, the winners are only just slightly above the dogs of the rest of the principals. They're still nowhere near the capital. And it's the same in Salute of the Jugger. And really, it's similar, not quite as stratified here in normal real world, but sports is a way for a lot of poor people seek to use sports as a way of getting out of poverty.
Yep.
And when they do get into the big leagues, whatever, they're still kind of below the owners. And, you know, that the owning class of people who run the teams and get all the real benefits.
Yeah.
You know, you're going, okay, you're a baseball player, you get $30 million over 4 years. I mean, that's fantastic. That's unbelievable, fascinating wealth. But you've got to realize that the owner of that team can afford to pay you $30 million over 4 years. So how much are they getting?
Yes.
And do they slum it with their team, or do they just use their team as like a status thing, as in have a party and, oh, look, the star players of whatever team is here. How cool.
Yeah.
And everyone goes, this is really cool. We've got the star players of this team. But in reality, that, you know, they're still separated.
Yeah.
Again, not as much in these days, because nowadays there's even, there's smart people who are able to work with players who have come from non-financially literate backgrounds, and they work together to, do fashion lines, perfumes, movies, whatever else, and thus kind of break free of that. But in Salute of the Jugger, it strips all of that down to the bare essentials, where you've got these guys, their only hope of living the good life is to play Jugger.
Jugger, yeah.
Did they even say what the name of this sport was?
No, I don't think they did. I didn't pick up it because they're juggers.
Yeah, they're juggers. The juggers are coming.
The juggers are coming.
Yeah, anyways, it was dog ball.
Dog ball. Dog skull. But I mean, on that, it is an interesting thing, isn't it? Like that sport is a bit universal. And sport is also a way for the working class to maybe leapfrog up out of the working class, and I think probably more so in the past that was a way, and this film really does. There is that scene where Gandhi, the coach of this team of juggers, and he's talking to what's her name, the main quick, and
Kidder,
that's it, Kidder. Sorry, I just blanked.
In my notes, she's just girl, new
no,
girl.
It is
until
Kidder.
Until I saw her name,
and she's sort of asking about the 9 cities and the league and that, and he's like, oh, they bring you in, they make you one of them, but you're not quite one of them. You are separate from them, and I think that was a really interesting thing, and you're definitely raising that same idea. I mean, this film doesn't suggest you could become like what The Rock did. And The Rock did that, Dwayne Johnson.
That's the thing, isn't it?
He wanted to be an American football player, and he did do that, but he wasn't ever really good enough.
Yeah.
And then he migrated to wrestling, and even in wrestling, he became a pinnacle, like the top of the WWF. But even then, he still wasn't probably completely free of his own brand and image.
As a member of wrestling, he was promoting wrestling.
Wrestling, yeah.
He didn't have. He wasn't influential
No.
on his own. He was influential so long as the Wrestling Federation allowed him to be, because he was The Rock.
Yeah.
But now he's just Dwayne Johnson, and he does productions, and he helps other people, and he does a lot of stuff outside. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, now you can get these people who figure out sideways things, but the Salute of the Jugger here obviously shows this level where you're brought up, and then you get to like Gonzo, who's like, top of the thing, but he's still just taking orders from the big guy. He's, as far as that, Lord Vile, what a name. So as far as Lord Vile's concerned, Gonzo's no step up. Like, he's a useful tool.
Yeah.
And he's cheap to keep, like just give him some food, and people like, talking to him so he feels fancy, but they like talking to him as a novelty, not because they're interested in his opinion or, they want to do a trade deal or anything with him. It's just, what's it like smashing someone's skull? And I say, oh, wow, it's pretty good. Anyway, there you go. So as I said, it's a bit of a downer thing, but that's what I came away with from this film.
Yeah, interesting.
What about, is this hope, warning, or experiment?
Look, I think you could put this into a warning, all right, being post-apocalyptic, but you've just gone off a downer. I'm going to put a little bit more hope back in and say that it was hope for me. I feel that Kidda is her quest in this film. She kind of strives to go to the League. She makes it to the League. Then when she's there, she realizes it's not all it's cracked up to be, but then sort of champion on in that third act and actually winning. To me, it's like there's a bit of hope in the world, and the film doesn't end on a happy note in the way that we don't really know if she goes on and has a successful dog skull ball career in the League.
We could do with a sequel of this, really, I think.
Is she, like the best quick ever? Does she go down in folklore history and have a successful career?
Does she lead a revolution?
That's right, and change the whole game. We don't actually know. It's left open, but I feel like there's hope in this film that, realistically, it is about her coming from nothing to the top, and it's not about money and success and all that. It's actually that she achieved her goal. So I'm going for a hope story.
Yes, I think so. But I was thinking a little bit experiment, as in, what is it for in the future, and what sort of, how's the sport evolve? It kind of devolves a bit, but also evolves a bit. But it's more so hope, like you said, because it is Kidda overcoming things. It's even Sallow overcoming his fear of returning to the League.
And also we see that although it's really brutal, the game, and the Juggers are brutal to each other, even the very first game, when it ends, they help each other up. It's very sportsmanship like. They even even the losers pay the trophy price. And then at the end in the League, when he is told to kind of kill, Rutger, it's like he goes, I don't really want to do that. Like in the game, I'll smash a skull if it's in the way of the dog skull. Yeah. But I'm not going to deliberately crush his skull, So it's kind of like there is emphasis that there is. It's just a violent game. That's all. Yeah. Is it very different? He used to say Aussie rules really violent. It's not as violent now, but. It is just a game. As long as you can walk away at the end of the game and go, oh, yeah, we're all still fine.
They're not trying to hurt each other. They're trying to win the game. It's
entertainment of the day. And in this post-apocalyptic world, it's brings people together. You could see the towns liked it. They liked watching this game. Oh, geez, and they seem to even like the aftermath, like the parties. They seem
they had a good party afterwards. And the town Juggers were scarred and battered looking. I don't know if... I suppose you'd find people who would be willing to do it in any given walk of life.
There's many moments in this film that it's really detailed. It's bleak. It's the guy hasn't eaten for 6 months, and all that kind of stuff. So it's implied it's a pretty brutal world. This one. So that's why in the cities they've got silk, whilst we're out here. Who knows what they're doing out there. And there's lots of dog meat, hey? Lots of burnt dogs in the film.
They had cooked dogs.
I thought that would be your number one takeaway. What's cooked
My number one takeaway is sweet and sour dog.
That's right.
Minus the sauce, so it's just dog.
So it's a bit of an older film. I remember seeing this film as a child on TV. As soon as I started watching this, I was like, oh, I know this film. Like, I kind of probably didn't quite connect it, maybe like some of the classics we've looked at. But as soon as I started, the juggers are coming, and, Rutger comes around the bend and that. And even when they started playing this game, I had memories of seeing this as a child on TV. Probably a couple of times I watched this film, but I haven't seen it since I was a child. How about yourself?
I watched it the first time on VHS. So this was a
premium,
a teenage film watching sleepover event thing. I think. Oh, the other thing, David Peoples did the Lady Hawk.
Yes,
also
did,
Rutger Hauer.
Yeah, right.
So I think this was my older brother had seen Lady Hawk, and being the good little D&D nerds, we loved this whole sort of adventure genre, and he said that was good. So my friends and I, we watched that on, we'd have sleepovers most weekends, so we watched that, and then a future effort to go get some videos, we found another video with Rutger Hauer's face on the front, and we went, hey, well, that kind of looks adventurous. Yeah. Let's give that a shot. And it's a shame we don't do fantasy movies too, because Lady Hawk's a really interesting one. The soundtrack especially.
Stay tuned for Surrey's side podcast.
Podcast. The interesting music soundtrack of fantasy films from the 80s. Oh. Very few of them actually had interesting soundtracks, but Lady Hawk does. Yeah, so we watched Salute of the Jugger, and it was good for a bunch of teenage boys. I think it would have been 15-ish.
Yeah, I reckon that violence would have caught you back in the 80s.
And the thing is, with a whole bunch of us watching, we weren't really up for a complex plot. Like, if this was like Blade Runner, like I remember the first time I watched Blade Runner, I kind of didn't get it. I think I was too young, but this was suitable. It was good. Yeah. And watching it this time, of course, it was nostalgic because it's in that old standard definition format, like video format. It had been cleaned up a little bit, but it was still, a fairly sort of authentic experience.
All those kids out there watching Stranger Things, this is how you do it. You go back, you get a VHS.
Oh my goodness me. A little while ago, I was going through a bunch of stuff to chuck out, and I found my VHS collection, and I still had a video player at the time. This is years ago now. Yeah. But I thought, here's Galaxy Quest. I think Galaxy Quest is quite good. We should do that sometime.
We need to do that. Yes.
Pop that in, and like a few minutes came in, and the video quality, I was looking going, I can't believe we used to watch this. Yeah, and because that was quite a good video. It was like quite a good video quality, that one, but. I immediately chucked them all. I think I sold them all. Someone who was collecting retro videos or something, paid me like $52,000 for them. No, I don't know, $52 maybe.
Now. The kids now are into it.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my experience. Rewatching it this time, it was nostalgic. It had that feeling I was expecting to be, drinking Diet Coke, and talking to my teenage buddies. Do you have any a favorite scene?
There's a couple of really good scenes, I reckon, narrative-wise. I liked the idea that Kiddo and Vincent D'Onofrio's character, which is young Gar, I like that. So they win a round, or they win a game,
yes.
And then the men are going off with, I guess, the local girls, the prostitutes, whatever, make it whatever. And the big Simba, who is a female, but she's one of the juggers, she sort of goes up and takes two of the young boys, and there's one boy left, but he's like really a boy.
Yeah, he's a bit little.
He's a little bit young for Kiddo. And anyway, and then so Kiddo kind of looks over at Vincent and kind of eyeballs him. And then we see them in the tent, and they're kind of like, they're going for it. They're trying to,
they're trying to
have sex. And at first I was like, well, it's just kind of whatever, post-apocalyptic sex. But then good old Rutger comes in and sort of stands over them and watches them for a moment or two, and it's a bit awkward, and kind of, grins away, and they're sort of rolling around and grunting and groaning. And then he
they're not happy grunts. They're not
happy.
Pained grunts. This is the thing.
And that's the whole point, is that then they kind of notice him there and they stop, and he says something along the lines of, "There's two juggers post game cannot have sex.
Yeah,
basically because of its wounds and gnashes on each other, something like that, and it's quite kind of revolting, but also makes you go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, they can't, can they? They're both
beaten up, and that's what you realise was happening is when they were sort of trying to be passionate, they just kept they go in for a hug and they'd stop and pull back, and it was. So
it was I thought that was just a really clever tweak of it, and the reality of it. I mean, like sports stars, like you can even take, here in Australia, AFL stars, and it's all beaten up. Oh, they've won the game and great. And when you really look at some of the behind the scenes of post game stuff, I mean, they players go home and they eat 14 kilograms of pasta. Just to catch back up on the carbs and sit in an ice bath. Like, they're not going out partying and having sex with all sorts of girls and guys and whatever their preferences are. They're just literally recovering.
It's the following night.
That's maybe the following night, So it's a funny thing, like this interpretation that I think perception that people have. So I liked that scene. That was kind of I thought that was just a nice deeper sort of level of the sport of the game, and just sort of saying how brutal it was. Why is this film a sci-fi, Surrey?
Well, you could look at the obvious point that it's post-apocalyptic, but that's just a way of setting a world up, because this is not a world that would work. It's not a story that would entirely work in the present day. It almost would. Mm. It might work in the past as well, but it takes us into this imagined, what would sports be like in a brutal world, like a Mad Max world?
Yeah.
Like they had Thunderdome, I guess, in Mad Max 3 or whatever it was. But yeah, what sort of sports would you have, and how would the league work? It was almost ancient Roman, but it wasn't quite.
Yes.
Because in the ancient Roman there, you didn't sort of have the gladiators were not 100% free. Even the freemen who signed up to it signed contracts to do X number of games and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Ridley Scott's documentary about it.
Yes, his documentary on it. But, so you've sort of got this combination now, I think, where you've got, say, modern-day UFC or boxing, where people go, hey, yeah, let's do this.
Yep.
But then combine that a bit with that gladiatorial aspect of it, where it's not really controlled. People do get maimed and killed. And it's sort of a brutal, hard life, but if you succeed at it, you do well.
Yeah.
And we get given this story which explores, the opportunities that might exist even in a post-apocalypse. And, you're not looking at, for example, Rocky, which is a similar sort of fighting story about a sport. But see, Rocky, if he didn't make it boxing, well, he wasn't going to be dead. And secondly, he had a job and things. It was his dream to be a boxer, but it wasn't a requirement to do much else. He could still work in a meat plant, and he still had Adrian he'd get married to, and he still had his friends and stuff. Whereas in the post-apocalypse, you don't have these sort of fallbacks. Like what was Kidder doing was working, cutting cane. Probably subsistence. And
there's that great scene, I think, at the start with her mum, isn't it? And, she's all beaten up from that first game and she'd lost, and, it's almost like all is lost. And her mum's saying, why are you doing this to yourself? And she has that fantasy of going to the big league, doesn't she? Like making it to the big game. And I do think that that's part of why I said hope, but sorry, as well. Like, it's kind of in sport, there's a bit of hope to kind of maybe break that cycle or get out of where you are. And you can see that, I don't know, they're like chopping a cane field down or corn at the start of this film, and it looks like pretty broken down corn.
Yeah, it wasn't
very
great.
lush corn, and even when they pay the juggers, it's like they're paying them in screws and bolts and nuts, and like, you don't really know what value they're getting out of it, do you?
No, but the science fiction part of this really is that by entering this science fiction world, this future world of devastation, we've stripped away all these other ways out.
Yeah.
Like, because if you were to take, here's a young man named Surrey who's working hard on a podcast and putting together a film festival each year, and he's writing books in the meantime, will he succeed? Or will he just have to fall back on his, successful IT career that is doing quite well. Thank
It's
you
not
very
much
much.
stakes,
Yeah, it doesn't. But if this was after the apocalypse, I would have to
The
substitute
podcast would save the day.
The podcasting would be a little bit. Yeah, well, it could be. Maybe the
broadcasts.
voice of the desert is the the important
way out.
star. But suddenly there are no other options. Like to get anywhere in society, the only option any of these people in these towns have is to become a jugger.
Yeah.
They can't go to the big city and somehow get the attention of a patron any other way. Like I didn't see art or artists. I didn't really see much. Like the nobles were looking at old art, and that's probably the art they appreciate. Yeah, because that's super rare. You think a Da Vinci portrait is rare and expensive now. You wait till after the nuclear holocaust, then you'll know all about how expensive a Dali painting is.
Yeah, imagine what a Banksy would be after the apocalypse.
Yeah, trying to find an intact wall with it on there, whatever. So so that's why I think of science fiction, because and we see this in a number of science fiction films where they use the science fiction element to strip away objections or ways out, or to create an environment that allows us to examine closely one aspect of humanity or technology or something. Was there any science in this film that you thought was particularly good, or an element of the environment or world that was exciting?
Well, I think, see, you've explained it well then, why this film is a sci-fi. And I think for me, I'm always interested in a post-apocalyptic. Okay, like that's something, like I like the zombie stuff. I really do like that. Mad Max in particular, like we will come to Mad Max at some point, obviously. So anything where you take... I like these broken societies, I guess, more than... I probably prefer that more than the Apple Store future.
Yeah.
Even though the Apple Store future... So it's kind of... That's the thing, isn't it? It's kind of, you either have... Quite often in sci-fi, you either have that world perfect Apple Store future, everything's white and glossy, or you have the post-apocalyptic, like we're in the Australian desert. This was Cooper Pedy again, wasn't
absolutely.
It? How many films have been shot there that we've actually even watched? We're going to have to count this, I think.
I jumped onto Wikipedia and had a look at South Australian films.
Yeah.
But because Iron Mother was filmed in South Australia,
in a studio.
Inside.
Yeah.
Yes.
But no, we looked at another one not that long ago.
The Osiris Child.
Yeah, that's right. That was shot there. Yes, that was a really modern one. And I know of other films in Cooper Pedy.
Pitch Black we've done, which is also Cooper Pedy.
There we go. Yeah. So if you're a fan of Cooper Pedy, get in touch, because we're talking about it again on this episode. But yeah, that I think that post-apocalyptic, broken down society, what does the world look like? And again, as I said, that's why I like the zombie stuff of like, you don't have society ticking along as you did. You break away the rules. And in this film, it's like the rules have all broken down. How do the working class survive? This sport is one way, as you said, it's the only way out. But so in terms of the science, for me, it's just that I really do then think, okay, yeah, we've gone back to the nomadic society a little bit, the real broken down. What would people do? How do people survive? And that's why you see things like prostitution probably more rife, and the young boy, you can come have sex with the young boy to the jugger, that one. Yeah, because you got to make some money. Like, you got to do something. Like
he might get a few ball bearings or something.
I don't know. You might get a cut, and that feeds his family. The suggestion of that boy is like, she says, it looks like he hasn't eaten in 6 months, and it's like, well, yeah, he probably hasn't, because we're seeing how these people are living, and like we said, there's lots of roasted dog. I think in that town, when they walked through the markets, there was frogs and those real Australian, those goannas.
Yeah, well, they had the crabs. You see the Balmain bugs?
Yeah. That's actually a real delicacy.
Yeah, they're good.
They're expensive. But the goanna,
For non-Australians, what we're talking about is there's a scene where they walk past after being at the ocean, and there's crabs hanging up, but there's also these other sort of strange, flat-looking shellfish, insecty looking things. They're actually bugs. You get here in Australia. They're kind of crayfish.
Yeah.
lobstery type of thing.
Being found in Australian waters, they're the size of 3 man's hands. They're huge.
They'll lop a leg off,
and they're deadly poisonous. Don't go anywhere near them. But we eat them.
The good thing is that when you see them around, there's no crocodiles.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they've killed all the crocodiles.
That's right. But yeah, there's a lot of those kind of animals and that real hustle and bustle of a marketplace. And yeah, I personally like that. I like seeing that world and how would we survive. You go to those zombie films and lots of them explore, how does humanity come back and work in a zombie environment. It's the same here. We don't actually know 100% what happened, why the world is in this desert landscape kind of thing. And people are just surviving. And so to survive, they've come up with this brutal sport. But then you see society, the class division, it's like they accelerate this harsh league. Like, the league is the top of the lane that no one can really challenge, right? And so the poor are just kind of really kept poor, and it's like a lottery system almost that you might get into the league one day.
The funny thing is, of course, it's one of those things that they could actually just eat the rich.
Yeah, they could.
But they've been told that you can do that kind of through this sport.
Yeah, that's
which
right.
the rich like watching.
Yes.
And you're like, okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's a way of always keeping the poor, which to me, the writer, David, I think that's that thematic style of the film. It's talking about the class structure, the rich keeping the working class down,
Yeah.
Again, right now in the world, and, Muskie is one of them, super wealthy people, more wealth in one person's fingertips than the rest of the world. And the rest of us kind of, working away to try to get a little piece of the pie, aren't we?
Yeah. And maybe one day he'll come and buy our podcast.
So if you're out there, he'll probably just buy Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, he'll
just buy the whole friggin' thing in one go.
Buy the trademark for podcasts in general, why not?
And stop us. We'll have to go across to some space brain
dog skull related sport.
Dog skull radio. There we go.
Coming next episode, Dog Skull Radio. Hi, welcome to Dog Skull Radio.
Speaking of space brains expanding into other realms, we have got the second year of the Space Brains Science Fiction Film Festival. It's all been announced, so if you haven't heard or you haven't seen on social media, get cracking, go out there and make a film that might be a post-apocalyptic film, because you now know that I like them.
Go check out our YouTube. We've got a little stinger trailer of what happened in the last year.
Oh, stinger.
And you can sort of see there's some lovely trophies.
Yeah.
We had lots of fun there with people and talking and learning.
There was people there, we promise.
Yeah, there was people there. We had authors, talking about terraforming Mars and talking about short stories. And then we also had Filmmaker there.
We talked about podcasting.
You've had a little listen to already. So this coming up year, we're going to try to craft an experience that is worthy.
That's right. It'll be a little bit different. But if you're a filmmaker or a writer, now's your time. You can get in early bird. The price is cheaper to submit your film on Film Freeway.
We've already got our first submissions.
Yeah, we've already had a couple, which is awesome. A return filmmaker from last year, which shows that he really enjoyed the first year. And he's come back for more. So we look forward to watching your films. But yeah, if you're interested, go to our website, spacebrains.com.au. Check out all the information, and you can submit your film on Film Freeway. There's also more information along there. So just go looking for Space Brains.
And an important addition to this coming up year's version, we have music videos.
Yeah.
So we want to see your science fiction themed story style thematic videos.
Yeah, if you're into that, go for
it. Because we end up getting several of them in last time, and we thought, that's a shame we don't have something specifically for that, because there's different criteria to judging such a thing. So
we'll need a little special statue of a space brain playing like a guitar or a piano
somehow
for the trophy there.
Yes. There we go. So anyway, there we go. That's the film festival.
Yeah.
And let's get into the plot overview. Let's talk about this film. Let's talk about some of the plot features, any symbolism, some of the narrative features, the camera, lighting, sound, editing, any social commentary messages other than what we've already spoken about, of course. How about you give us a bit of a rundown of what this film is about?
So, as we mentioned, David Webb Peoples, writer director of a lot of sci-fi, so go check out his biography, and he's still making stuff today. As I said, the 12 Monkeys TV show is around at the moment. He's still working on that. So he was the writer and director of this film. We mentioned it was shot in Oz, and I think there's probably a connection to Mad Max somewhere there. The era of this film, they were probably
89. Mad Max Thunderdome
Mad Max started in the 70s,
78 or so.
So I'm not sure what Thunderdome was, but I reckon it was probably done by 89. So
86. I mean, I could turn around and just plug it in the computer, but we'll find out when we do that episode.
And we mentioned Rutger Hauer. He plays the character Solo, sort of the lead in a way, with Joan Chen as Kiddo. Vincent D'Onofrio. Now, look, if you haven't seen Vincent D'Onofrio, where are you living? This guy
Full Metal Jacket, Law and Order.
I know, and he's an awesome actor. He's a poet as well. I heard a bit of his poetry a couple of years ago.
13th Floor, which is another sci-fi that we should watch.
Yep, add it to the list. Joan Chen as Kiddo, Delroy Lindo as Mabaloo. Was it Maloo?
What was it? He was in something I watched
he's been
fairly
in lots
recently.
And
He's been in a lot of stuff.
You know this guy's face. Like, he's all over the place. And Anna Katrina.
He was in The Core. I watched him.
The Core, that's it.
I watched it with my kids the other week.
Yeah, he is in that.
That was a fun movie.
I don't actually know the budget of this. Couldn't clearly see it. So if you do know that, hit us up. David Webb Peoples.
I was filmed in South Australia. They probably got it for like $20.
Yeah. Back in those days. And its box office return was under $1 million, $882,000. So I'm not... Yeah, I'd like to know what the budget was. Back then, in Australia, inflation, what we're going through now, cost of living.
Yeah.
You could buy a film for under $1 million quite easily in Cuba Beach. So we do like to break our narrative down with some common elements that you can find from all good story and script writing teachers. People like Campbell, Schneider, McPhee, Field are some of them. Go Google all of them and you'll learn how to write a script or a story. Basically, the premise here is that we work off a 3-act structure. And that 3-act structure is then broken down into very specific moments in film. We can call that scenes or beats. What happens in Act 1?
Act 1 is, of course, the beginning. So that's the introduction. We see the world. We find the characters. We get a bit of a theme set up so we feel like we know what's going on. And most importantly, towards the sort of towards the end there, we get this catalyst, an inciting incident.
Ooh,
this is...
Shake the bones.
This is that moment where you sort of go, oh, this is the direction the film's going in. It's a question that is you're hoping to see answered in Act 2. It's the way you can see the world is going to change. So you've been shown what the world's like, and now you're going to say, oh, it's changing.
Yeah.
This sounds like a good story. And there's a bit of a debate there. There's about, the main character or the characters tend to wonder if this changes something that's good. Should we follow it? Do we have to follow it? Maybe they don't seem to have much choice, but they try to resist it in some way. Eventually they choose to, have a story so we can watch something, which is nice. And they do a break into 2. Sometimes that's actually really quite obvious. I saw a couple of films where there was almost like the character got knocked out, and then they wake up in Act 2.
Yeah, that's right. They wake up.
I mean, Wizard of Oz is probably a perfect example of that, where she wakes up literally in Act 2 in the middle of fun and games.
Or Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole.
So tell us about Act 2.
And it was pretty clear in this film as well. So if you're out there listening to us and you've obviously watched it, can you spot Act 2? Because I think it was very clear in this one. So Act 2, this is the fun and games. This is what I know Schneider likes to say. It's really, you should be seeing the trailer here. And he calls that the fun and games. But ultimately, hey, look, we've paid our $10, $20, or you're watching an old VHS copy from Surrey's collection from 1983
for $23,000.
$1,000, and you're trying to decipher how the hell did I spend so much money on such a poor quality thing. But anyway, you're doing it. You're committed. And so you're sitting there and you want some fun. You want some games. You want some excitement, or you want horror. You want terror. You want romance, whatever it is. Why did you sit down to watch this movie? If you're stuck with the first 20 to 30 minutes, now we're into the actual plot points of the setup, what Surrey said, that catalyst, the question. So now the character is exploring that and having some fun with it. And, as I said, even in the most dramatic film, it's all about the drama. In the most horror film, it's all about the terror and the horror. In sci-fi, we should see the post-apocalyptic world. I can't say that word right now. And anyway, as the character has all this playtime, they are learning about their catalyst. They're trying to figure out an answer. They're trying to solve it, and they end up having a go, and they get a bit of a midpoint, and it's pretty much the middle of the film. And that midpoint is either a bit of a positive or a negative for them. And, what it does is they sort of feel like, hey, yeah, I'm a bit triumphant. And here it's like, no, you know what? You've had a go at all the fun and games. You've explored some different territory. Now things are getting serious. And so for the rest of Act 2, it's more about the world closing in, their adventure, their journey, coming towards some sort of head. Things start to maybe go wrong. They might lose the path, so to speak. If they were climbing the mountain, it now snows in and they can't see even which way is up or down anymore, right?
And they don't want to go to Moria.
And they don't want to go, yeah, that's right. They don't want to go. Or, they're given a quick all-access pass to Elon Musk's office and they could just go in and all these money is just sitting there on the desk, right? And so you don't have to do all the work. You could just take some money.
Yeah,
so they're sort of given
that won't
something
lead
maybe.
to a dark night of the soul, will it?
No, not at all. And so that's what happens. Like they sort of, it's things aren't going so well, and things go a bit pear shaped. That's what I'm trying to get at there, and that does lead us to that moment of the dark night of the soul, and the moment that everything's kind of gone to crap. And why did I go on this quest to begin with? Why did things go pear shaped all the way back at the catalyst? Why did I decide? And this was really obvious in this for Kiddo. So we'll come back to that in a moment. And then that kind of, they have to go, get the grit, don't they? They grit their teeth, and do they go on? And if they do, then you get a third act. And what happens in that? Sorry.
Well, assuming you get a third act, which thankfully we do almost always.
It might be there, but it also might be piss weak. And so,
It could be, yes, but
we're looking at these
in the third
ways.
act. It is the finale. The hero gathers his resources, or her friends and allies, and enacts a bit of a plan, and it starts going well. But then it has a little bit of a snag or a hiccup, which requires people to turn about and demonstrate their growth, their learning, their knowledge, what the whole point of the first part of the movie was all about. They've got to show that.
Force.
They've got to use the Force, Luke.
Yeah.
I mean, that is an obvious.
That's an ultimate.
That's it. That's one where you just look at it and go, that's what the spacebrains are talking about. That scene used the Force, Luke. Okay. Yeah. But that leads to then the true finale where a resolution occurs. And so most of the time we like a happy ending, but it's not entirely necessary. Sometimes it can be a bit bleak. I think we did The Shape of Water. Yeah. It was kind of a bittersweet ending. It was like a bit... It wasn't like do-do-do-do-do. It was sort of a little bit darker, but it was satisfying. And then the final image lets us know what the world is all about. Yeah. Some films foreshorten the final image.
They do.
Purposefully, I would assume. I mean, why wouldn't you? Why would you, unless you did it on purpose?
Roll credits.
In order to
rolled them too early.
Introduce uncertainty.
Yeah.
We did The Lobster way back, episode 2.
That's such a good film.
Episode 2 there, where we're sort of left wondering if this guy gouges his eyes out or not. And like it cuts before we get an answer. And so that's an example there, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, you can have an ambiguity-styled ending, and that's the point.
Yes.
A filmmaker or writer, whatever, wants you to kind of go, yeah, okay.
Inception, the final image.
Yeah. Makes you, a film that just deliberately designed to make you question. I mean, we had Ben Young last episode, tell us, he would like he would like friends to leave his movie and basically have an argument, have a discussion about his film.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, is that what a filmmaker is going after? Well, then you might want to have an open-ended film at the end.
Indeed. So let's talk a bit about this film and how it fits into all of this.
Here come the juggers. Here come the juggers. Here come the juggers.
I think it's more like, here come the juggers.
Here come the juggers, mate.
Juggers.
Mate, there's some juggers coming. I know. It's like there's sort of tribal music going in the background.
Starts off with a bit of gold text on black as well, which just tells us basically Juggers is... No one knows where the game started or why, but they play it.
They play it. And around the corner comes Rutger.
Yeah, we get
quick.
We get the opening, and what I liked about this opening is it looked like pyramids. They had the piles, but of course, if you go to Kubapedi, that's just the main street looks like that. There's broken down cars, but they come around, but it sort of looks. I thought it looked like pyramids, like these piles up, and they're sort of marching almost in procession, like it's a ceremonial thing. And sure enough, as you said, they come to this town and the kids start saying, here come the juggers, here come the juggers. And what a great way. We automatically now know so many things about how this world works.
Yes.
And because we know from the little text, juggers are sports people, athletes of some description, but clearly they are nomadic. And when you enter a town, it's like a special event has occurred.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very barren world. As that boy says, here come the juggers, mate, there seems to be a response from the crowd of, we want to get in there and we want to, like they all get a bit of hustle and bustle to them, don't they? A crowd forms. The juggers themselves don't seem to really care too much either. They're kind of very confident. They're kind of, we're coming here. They're challengers, aren't they? And they're just coming into this town. And we meet Kiddo pretty quickly that she's working with her father. You would sort of presume, sort of looks like it. And they're cutting down this bleak, depressing looking corn or cane.
I thought it looked a bit like sugar cane.
Sugar cane, yeah. Didn't look in good shape.
They don't do a lot of farming of that in South Australia.
No, but it's not South Australia.
Oh, sorry.
It's the future.
The future. Well, maybe they should be growing something more suited to this environment there.
No. This is the thing, as you said, we don't know when the game started. We don't even know when this is, do we? Like, we don't.
No, it's not. It doesn't tell you the
this
setting.
could be hundreds of years after, like the Russians invade the US with nuclear bombs.
After Red Dawn.
Right,
well, in '89, it was a genuine concern.
Thing, yeah. The crowd, gathers round. We have this tough-looking, war-wounded, grubby, muscular group of guys and girls, and they kind of start rapping. Oh no, they drop the dog heads, don't they?
It's like they're it sort of looks, because there's no real dialogue here. It looks like they're negotiating something, like they're sort of going. And
here we go.
And
lots
the village,
of dog skulls.
the village accepts.
Yeah.
And then they start, and out from the village come some more, like
tough looking,
wounded,
weird,
hardcore guys, and they'll start putting on armor made out of strips of rubber and old tires and stuff.
And this is great because it's kind of like a montage of quick cuts, close-ups, strapping on stuff, as Surrey just mentioned, weird shaped cutouts of, recycled bits of timber and metal, and they seem to be really wrapping themselves up to protect certain organs but not others. I always find that interesting.
I love that little the bit to hold his nose on.
Yeah.
There's a special nose strap to hold his nose in.
Kind of like a jock strap, but over his nose.
It makes me feel as if he's had a previous incident where someone has grabbed his nose and probably... And indeed, I think that's Dog Boy at the start.
It is, isn't it?
And he's got a fairly munted nose.
He does.
So I have a feeling that he learnt the hard way that you should protect your nose.
It is. And it's shown through those jump cuts and nice close-ups, but also it's very tribal music. And there's no dialogue. It's just literally shots as they prep for this game, really. And you're kind of getting the feeling that there's not really rules. There's not going to be any real solid rules.
Well, there's no ref.
No. So it's sort of setting itself up that, it is going to be a pretty brutal. And they also have some weapons, don't they? They have a chain. Vincent has a big metal chain thing.
Yeah, and they're pulling these things out, and they've got the couple of the guys have got the sort of staff things with hooks on it, but they're padded.
Yeah.
So and that was an interesting point as well. They're putting all this armor and stuff, but their weapons are kind of padded a bit.
Yes.
Except for the chain. That seems a bit
brutal.
brutal.
The chain is just brutal.
I guess it works, doesn't it? You're meant to keep away from it.
Yes.
Yeah, and so the girl, Kidda, she comes running out despite the disapproving look from her father. And she comes around. She's totally keen to watch this. She pushes to the front, and the sport begins.
Yeah, and it's a brutal game. We learn that there's kind of two guys in the middle, the quicks, and they have to kind of be the first one to grab the dog skull and then get it onto the pointy stick. Get the skull onto the pointy stick. Yes. Anyone can understand that, right? Like within a minute, you get the game. You get the rules of the game. Meanwhile, everyone else is just kind of beating the crap out of each other.
It's a bit like Quidditch.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the Seekers. Yeah, no one's allowed to get the Seekers, but they can sort of get buffeted about. But anyway, that aside, I don't know if J.K. Rowling watched Salute of the Jugger and took inspiration from that or not.
Well, she took a lot of inspiration from a lot of different places, so she might have.
She should get in touch with us and let us know.
Yeah. So what do you think then was the catalyst?
So the catalyst then, a lot of the game there was leading up to just introduction and showing us this sport.
Yeah.
So we understand it. And some of the characters as well.
Yeah.
I think the inciting incident really was when, and I won't read verbatim the rude words I wrote there, but when Kidda wrecks the dog boy's leg. And the reason for that, it could have just been a bit of a tackle and a tussle and knocked him down. Yeah. But the director clearly showed Kidda like twisting.
Yeah.
Like she took particular effort to ruin his leg.
Yes.
And that's where you start going. So that's the beginning of this.
And she said that before, didn't she? She said, "I'm gonna," because he said something about her tits.
Yeah, I'm gonna rip your tits off.
Your tits off, and then she goes, "I'm gonna break your leg."
Yeah.
And so then when she is breaking his leg, it's kind of like, well, yeah, she did say that.
Yeah, she did say that. Yeah, but I mean, she gets hammered. But that's an important part of the catalyst as well, is because we're talking about debate. So she has said that you can tell. When did she say it? She really wants to watch it, and she wants to be in it because as soon as the opportunity comes up for her to be the quick, she jumps in there. Like, and then she messes this guy's leg up, and then you sort of go, oh, okay, she's going to join their team.
Yeah. So I mean, so I completely agree. Like she enters the game. She's tough and quick. And she breaks his leg and kind of gets it, but then she's beaten to a pulp.
Yes.
You know, because that's what they do.
Sallow just hammers her a few times.
And so then the debate after that is like, as I said earlier, it's the scene then she's been wiped up by her mother. You know, and this is the debate because she's going, but I want to get to the big league. You know, and her mother's like, but look at the price you're paying.
Yeah.
You know, is it worth it? You could just stay here and live a humble life with the decaying sugar canes.
Yeah.
What's wrong with the life we've got here? And you see the mum and dad, you see them, they hop in that tiny little bed together.
Yeah.
And this is the whole point of this opening scene. It's like, it's so depressing, really, their little existence. And Kidda doesn't want that. She wants something more, you know? Yes. And so she's looking for a way out. So at first it was like, if we beat these juggers, we could be the team of challengers. But they don't. They lose, and then it's like, well, I could join you. Your quick is gone. I can be your quick.
Yeah, and it was nice that when the juggers walk off and she's following them.
Yeah,
they do stick behind their quick. They stick behind their and dog go, boy, no, he can keep going. But then in the morning, he just looks up there and says, I can't actually walk anymore.
Yeah, but they do say, oh, we could stretch her as well, like he'll heal. He'll take a few days.
Yeah, so they're very loyal.
So they're extremely loyal, and she's like, no, you know, take me. Look at me. I'm a fit one. I broke his leg. I'm good. But they're like, no, we'll do it. But he's the one that says no. You know, leave me here. I'm not being stretchered. And again, that shows you this bleak world.
That's what they Snyder would call saving the cat. I think that immediately tells us basically this team. They're rough and brutal, but you know they're friends, they're colleagues, they're comrades, they're loyal to one another. Yeah. And even though they all knew that their quick had done his leg, that was probably the end of him. at least for the next couple of years, you know.
So Kira is then, they bring her in, but they challenge her, don't they, straight away?
Yeah, we have
She has to show her
the
chops.
training montage.
Yeah. So she has to show her chops. And to me, this is just before, because they're like,
this is almost part of the debate, isn't it? Now this is the team debating.
This is the team going, well, are you good enough to be out quick? You know, like, because if you're not good enough, we're just going to lose, you know. And so they challenge her, and she shows a bit of might. And Salo then actually gives her, she needs a bit of protection. So he does the protection thing with the big chain. And shows that she can kind of get through, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and
she can keep up.
She can keep up. And so she's accepted. And to me, that is break into two.
Yeah, that's...
Like, it's a real obvious
one.
Yeah,
so the choosing Act 2 is the trying out for the quick.
Yeah.
And then... And it is interesting that some films have very clear-cut points. And I think when they finish the training and they're walking in the new town as the formed team, that's surely Act 2. That's
is Act 2, yeah.
Because we're talking fun and games. This movie literally has games.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's about this game.
Yeah. But if you take Kiddo, she's tried out, lost, followed them. They said, you can't be part of us. The quick has then gone, I can't go on. But they haven't just gone, oh, yeah, well, come on in. They've gone, no, you've got to try out.
Yeah.
Try out. And, you know, Salo goes, yeah, well, actually, she's all right. You're in the team.
Yeah.
Act 2. Bang.
Yeah.
Like, it's a perfect Act 2.
And now we're expecting...
Because if she didn't pass that training module, go back to your mum and dad. End of story. Your quest lost. You lost your quest.
And we'd go to the next town where they get a new quick.
They get a new quick. They get a better one, right?
Is actually where the story would start instead of this one.
But this is a short, sharp story. It's great. It's moved on to Act 2 already.
So it moves into Act 2, and we said there's the fun and games.
Yeah.
Literally is games here. And you can well imagine the movie trailer for Salute of the Jugger here would have a lot of this, because there's just sort of, I think there's about three we see in battles. Fair fullness.
Yeah,
but there's also implied that there's a number of others that they've done. Like they're moving on up, as it were.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a sporting montage in a way, which we get in other sports sort of style films. You know, they're playing other teams, they're playing different characters. We see different wounded, strong, you know, weapons and people and soldiers and sports people. Like, we see a variety of them, don't we? And
a couple of different towns and stuff. And this is where we learn as we go along about, we learn that Salo used to be in the league.
Yep.
And that he had to leave because he was getting a little bit involved with one of the noble women whose partner didn't kind of like that. And this is why I had my takeaway as being this sort of, sport is presented as a way out, but it's actually kind of a way of keeping him down.
Yeah.
Because though, Rutger was famous, he was in the league.
Yep.
And he'd even attracted, the amorous attentions of one of the nobles. He clearly was not one of them.
No.
He was not accepted at all.
No.
And in fact was essentially banished, fearing for his life, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah, not allowed back. And that's where Gandhi does tell Kiddo that, you're accepted in when you play in the league as to be like them, dress like them, even live like them, but you're not them.
No.
And there's that clear distinction. So with Salo, he was kicked out because he fell in love, which the rest of us would go, oh, well, what's wrong with that? He fell in love. He was a good sportsman. Yeah. But they didn't, the upper class didn't like that. And so...
Well, could you imagine
banished.
If the league, not only could you get up to this certain level where they're still controllable, but if they could actually exceed that,
run the league.
And now that, so they're getting a little bit ahead of themselves now. And what will the nobles do then?
That's right.
What would their job be? They wouldn't have anything to offer the masses if the masses had control of their own game.
You have to control the game. It's simple.
So we do learn a bit more about the game, and here we get Salo loses his eyeball. This is after we've had that scene that you're talking about with two juggers can't have sex after a battle because it just hurts.
Yes,
fair enough. And he loses his eyeball and sews it shut. And now we can see this is the first inklings that we've got some problems coming up. But it's also the catalyst to make them go to the League. It's just like, well, we've got to go. Kidder says, I really want to go. I want to do this.
Yeah, she's been saying she wants to go the whole time.
And Sallow, I think, having lost an eyeball, he's going, well, I've got nothing more. Like, I either do this and get killed in the League, succeed at the League, or I'm finished anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to be scraping. Because I think he always had a dream also to retake his place.
Yeah.
He was just a bit low-key about it. But when he lost his eye, he was like, okay, well...
Probably got one chance.
Kidder's really keen to go ahead, so I can ride that enthusiasm. Because if he turned back and followed what Kimber and Mabulu said, let's just stay in the dog towns.
Yeah,
like that's it. His legend finishes.
Yep, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because earlier there's also a guy with one eye that they beat quite easily, and I suppose that's the idea here. He's lost an eye. It's all going to start going downhill from here.
Yeah.
So for him, it's an interesting evolution of his character, because it's like, well, if I could just keep fighting the dog towns and lose another eyeball anyway, or I could give the League one more crack and kind of get my revenge. And so, he's keen to do it. So to me, that's the midpoint, right?
Yes, I mean that would have to be because
like him deciding, yep, let's go to the 9 cities,
because we're changing direction, and things have become, as often is the case, that things become more serious. The fun and games are over.
Yeah.
Eyeball has been lost. We're going to the big league where consequences are greater.
Yeah, and they have a bit of a disagreement for a moment that they're going to separate. Solo's going to go, Kiddo's going to go, Gandhi's going to go, but the others are not. And then so they have a bit of a standoff. It's a good sort of example of the journey is maybe over for the team, and Salo is just determined to go on. As I said, Kiddo's going, Gandhi's going, and actually Vincent is also going.
Little gal.
And so then it's like, and there's a great little moment there of, oh no, wait up for us. Isn't there? Really?
I think they sort of looked at each other and thought, what else are we going to do?
Like, what are we going to do now? Because you imagine, like, this is the thing. You're a jugger. You maybe, sure, you fight these brutal games, but then, you get the food and you get the women and you get the, is it a better lifestyle than the decaying sugarcane again?
Yeah.
Like, what's your path in this world? So, so they kind of chase up and they catch up. But to me, this is kind of really great writing of the world. The bad guys close in, the world getting a bit crappier or smaller or tighter or worse. Is that, first of all, it's hard to get into the city. You've got to kind of queue and wait on this mountain, and they only let in so many people into the mine shaft.
And surprisingly, there's this little, elevator.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, it's just a little bit down. No, it's just like, it's going down and down, and they're like lying down, having a bit of a sleep, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, how long does that? And it's cool how you see some levels open up, isn't it? And there's like one level where there's really hot fire and guys, pumping whatever.
And some with an angle grinder.
And then there's another level where there's an angle grinder and stuff, which makes a lot of sense because...
It also shows, though, that this city is considerably more advanced.
Yes.
Not just having this elevator, but, they've got pipes and machinery. Yeah. They've got plumbing.
Well, to run the elevator to begin with, right? Like, you need something.
So it's quite an eye-opening. And Kidder stays awake the whole way down, just like, oh, my goodness.
Yeah, eyeballing it all. So it's hard to get into this city. Once they're in, they go straight to Solo goes straight to challenge, and so this is also another hard point: is that they watch a bit of a battle happening, Solo and Kiddo, and she realizes, it's a lot fiercer.
Yeah, this is.
And
I think also because they're sitting on that fence there, and the guy that was squished out there getting hammered was the Quick.
Yeah,
and she's like looking at this Quick, going, "Oh, that could be me."
Yeah, and he's kind of getting squished through the metal grate. It's a lot fiercer. There's a crowd watching. There's the rich folk. There's, it's the big leagues. It is what it is. It's intimidating.
We also found out, she asked, how far did you get?
Yeah.
Asking Sallow. And he says, 26 stones. I can't remember where it came up, but it was like 26 stones.
Yeah, like the length of the game.
Oh, before you won? No.
No.
That's the longest anyone's ever gone.
Yeah.
And then we see this battle down here, and it's just like, oh my goodness me, 26 stones. It's like half a minute or something. It's like,
that's right, yeah. And so they realize that if they want to fight if they want to actually do this challenge, it's not just going to be challenging. It's going to be kind of a fight for their survival. Like they might die, they might get squished up and eaten.
It's pretty
out.
serious.
Yeah, and so for me, this is also like the all is lost. This is what leads into that. Then Kiddo is confessing that she's too scared to do this. So it's kind of like
because they go in. Well, they go in first of all to put their challenge forward.
Yeah, they put the challenge forward,
and they're getting considered, and Sallow quickly scurries through not to be seen, but then obviously his enemy sees him and has a little word with the judges.
Yeah,
and this is real, bad guys closing in. Sort of things are getting, dark nighty, where they're like, oh, this is stupid, and then little Gar, when they're having dinner, basically goes, he's basically just about lost his hope, hasn't he? He's going, oh, we would have done it if it wasn't for Sallow, but he had it all, he had everything, and he gave it like. Really? Did he have it all?
So to me, that's the all is lost moment, because he announces that the challenge is not accepted. So it's the death of the dream. You know what I mean? So for Kiddo, it's you don't even get to do the challenge. You don't even get to fight. You wanted to do that, you don't even get a chance to play in the league. And so then she's kind of licking her wounds with Sallow, and saying that she actually is saying, well, we came here and that was what I wanted to do, but you know what, I don't want to do it anyway. Like I didn't want to do this. It's okay. And they're in this awesome hotel, which is like just
chain bunks on the wall,
chain bunks to the brick wall that they have to climb all the way out to the top.
I was wondering, maybe this is like an old mine, and maybe that's like the mine face, and it's just like a great big face there that's sort of
terrific, again showing the classes. And we get privileged to the villain telling the Gonzo, is it Gonzo the soldier?
Yes.
The
slasher.
The Jugger, who is also in Mad Max, that guy.
Yes.
He says, when you play them tomorrow, basically kill Solo, right?
Yeah.
Like squish his brains out. And he's like, well, I don't really, and they're like, no, you're going to do it. Yeah. So again, it shows the class that even though you're in the leagues and this guy's won
particularly
lots of
because
games,
they're up there in this luxurious dining section. There's you can tell
food.
It's luxurious dining is good food because it's a really big lizard.
Yeah.
That they've got, not just those little ones you saw.
And it's cut up into tiny little pieces.
Yeah, and there's someone serving it. And Gonzo's all dressed up and he's in his finest. But again, it's like you can tell, it's like when the owners invite the team to have the dinner and stuff, and so you got the owner, and then you got the actors and the politicians and so forth, like going, ooh, this is really interesting. We've got this sports players here with us. I liked watching you in your game, and
you do have that woman who that was actually a little bit earlier, but she touched the sports player and they were all bloody, and she then licked the blood.
Yeah,
she's like, oh, hello.
Yeah, but you don't imagine any of these people asking for any advice or their input, or actually, I've got a job that you might be interested in doing. Like, perhaps you can become look after my finances or something. No, they're only it's just curiosity.
Yeah.
So even though Gonzo's all dressed up, he's got his fine dinner, and he's superficially enjoying the same privilege as the rich people. Really, he's not. He's really just there as the entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like a joker, like a clown, really, isn't it? Yeah, it is like that. So they get the chance then because of that, then we know that they're going to be fighting, and that's basically what's announced the next day, that the challenge has been accepted. So they get to fight, and they go into the arena, but no one else is there watching. It's empty. The challenges are the juggers are a bit different as well. They're kind of like the B grade team. Yeah.
Except for Gonzo. They're confused when the Gonzo comes out as, oh, you're here.
But these guys are only challengers. So there's like, I'm here. I will note as well, awesome little bit of makeup, that Gonzo's got that steel skull. Steel skull.
Yeah, the plate exposed,
because it's just kind of exposed and a little bit gushy over the top of it.
It does indicate a certain brutality.
Yes, he's had his head cracked in at some point.
And I also noticed quite notably this team, the challenge team, had goggles.
Yes.
Well, they wear your goggles, Sally.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they know what happens.
That's right. Protect your eyeballs. At all times, protect your eyeballs. So there's a fight scene. There's round 1, 100 stones. So the time in, they make it, like they get through that 100 stones.
And Gonzo doesn't destroy Sallow. In fact, he just tells the other guy to pin him.
Yeah.
And
actually, sorry, just before we jump there, to me, right, so they come out into the arena, and this is an example of like climax finals, is that Kidda says to Solo, so this is before they play round 1, she says, "Oh, I'm frightened, like we're going to lose." Like I never thought I would. What did she say? She says something like
I've never felt like this in the match before.
Yeah, because I always sort of thought I was attempted to win. I thought there was a possibility.
I was always going to win.
Yeah, it's always going to win, and whereas now we're going to lose. And he says, "Well, just
win then."
Win then.
Yeah,
and it does. So to me, that's a great example of like, she's like, oh yeah. So it's like forming the plan, isn't it? It's like we'll try to win. Don't
the great
give
thing
up.
is you don't ever learn anything if you don't lose something.
No, that's right.
So yeah, first step to winning is losing.
Right? Like have a crack.
That's why we have this first part here where they enter the battle. Sallow gets pinned, and they don't score, but they do manage to just hold in there until 100 rounds is up. Except, I think one of their Big Simba is...
She's knocked out.
She got beaten. Senseless, maybe.
They all got beaten, but they lasted the 100 stones. And she's just a bit too injured. They go, she can't stand. And automatically as well, the A-League, they just change out a couple of players. So they've got reinforcements. Yeah. But because they've lasted the 100 stones, we've had a bit of a flurry of a crowd. The underclass again are like... They're still going. The Juggers are still going, so they've all kind of rushed in, and even some of the upper class have come in to watch as well. Now it's obviously an interesting game. So then it's round 2, all right? So we've had one crack at winning, no good, but we've lasted round 2.
Gandhi has to come in.
Yeah, so Gandhi comes in. He's the last-minute replacement. 100 stones. I thought that was like really interesting. Is 100 like that guy? That's that guy's job is 100 stones, just to throw 100 stones at the thing.
And I also love that he had a munted jaw.
Yeah, he did.
So clearly it's a tough life.
Yes. Yeah, and so they fight. It's round 2. They go for it. And really, it really focuses in on Kiddo's fight, doesn't it, with the new Quick. And he's sort of a bit more... You can tell that Quick is a little bit more intelligent. Like he doesn't kind of crack on or do any slang, rip her tits off. It's she's come for a long way. They've lasted.
Yeah, going to do it.
Yeah, he's going to do it. So they fight and they have a good kind of, chess game battle where, she's pulling his arms and he's pulling her legs and he gets the dog's skull bone and gets away, and then she clambers over the top of him.
We also see a bit of this, I think maybe it's B story there, where Sallow confronts Gonzo this time without being pinned.
Yes.
Because I think he makes his other guys take out those people. So this is like his personal fight now, where he fights Gonzo. It's not that he had anything against Gonzo. No. They're good friends afterwards as well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But this is kind of the symbol of him
standing up,
showing Lord Vile that you can't keep me down, because Lord Vile has told Gonzo to take him out. And did Gonzo tell him? No, maybe not.
No, I don't think.
But they do fight very seriously.
Yeah, and he does. He overcomes Gonzo.
Yes.
So that gives them the upper hand of an extra player.
Well, yeah, I mean, because as soon as you get that one beater, in fact, again, my son said, why do these guys with the 6 just fight each other?
Yeah.
I said, well, because if they don't, then the fighter's going to go take out the thing. And sure enough, beat up Gonzo.
Yeah.
And then Sally just sort of comes over and
Squishes
trips over the Quick, and because there's this Quick versus big old Rutger Hauer with a big stick.
Yeah,
he gets knocked down, and that's where Kidda is about to run off for the dog skull, and he says, "No, walk, take your time."
Yes,
and she does. She saunters over and absorbs the adulation of the crowd.
Yeah, and even the stone thrower stops. Because he's like, they've got it, don't they? They're going to win.
He's heard a change in the crowd, and so he turns around and because normally the stone thrower and all these ones has got their back to the game. Yeah. I guess that's important so they don't speed up or slow down based on what they're
just supposed to count out 100.
They're just counting it out.
Anyway, she runs down and chucks the skull bone onto the stick.
the podcast mic on the pointy stick.
Nice and slowly.
Yes.
Sorry, she doesn't run down to that walk. And in Salute of the Juggers versus Blood of the Heroes, here there's just a small difference in that the celebration scenes, they roll credits. So you just straight away, there's the shots that remain in the film, but we start getting the titles over the top. We don't have any dialogue. The music kicks in. Versus in Salute of the Jugger, we have actually those scenes with dialogue play out. Yeah. It's not a huge difference in the meaning of the ending there. It's just kind of really shortened in the Blood of the Heroes.
Yes, I think they were just really concentrating. And this is sort of what I was getting at with the end of the final image here, where it's, you could say it was purposefully shortened perhaps to draw more attention to this victory, the momentary victory, but there's still the uncertainty of what this means.
Yes.
And I genuinely think it would be good to have a sequel. You could have a sequel of Kidda and her time in the League and, perhaps discovering that, she's not getting all she wants. And maybe there's some, way that she could pivot this to help her family, help other people or something. So that,
yeah, well, I mean, there's other films where the winning of the battle, the winning of the game means that the underclass have overtaken the upper class.
Yeah.
But in this film, that's not the suggestion. It's just they've just won this one round. Yes. So there's definitely, the door is well and truly open for a sequel or, more to the story. Because what does happen next? I mean, the upper class could just have soldiers come in and shoot them dead.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's fine. They just keep the power. Or does Kiddo and this whole team, do they all become players in the League? Or do they kind of now live in the 9 cities and their life rolls around that and they've got to kind of challenge the next level of the League? You know? So it'd be interesting.
It'd be good if we could get David Peoples to call my peoples.
Yes, I think that would be
And then
great.
we'd have peoples talking peoples.
Yes, you have many peoples there. I like it. So let's find out. But it's a great... what I thought, straight away is like, I love how short and sharp that film is. That's a wham bam, thank you, man.
I know,
and that ending's like a great, like they win. Yeah, Kiddo made it to the League. She won the game.
I know.
What more do you want, Surrey?
Sometimes there's a tendency of some movies to be a little bit long. The number of times I sat down with my wife and go, let's watch this film, and I bring it up and I sort of see it's like 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'm like, oh my God, there's gonna be like 11 o'clock at night. Come on, what do you think I am, a teenager? Jesus, And so that's why we like the TV shows, because you can watch one or two episodes and you can cut it off at some point.
And you end up watching 3 and it's midnight.
Yeah, I know. I've put my foot down on that. That's happened a couple of times, because then I wake up and we're both ratty in the morning, and the kids, for some reason, also seem ratty.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why.
Anyway, let's not let our story go on. And where would you put this onto the ladder? So we have the idea of the ladder of all the films we're looking at, and kind of suggestions of maybe where you should watch one of the films where we've reviewed, and chuck it in and create a trilogy of sci-fi films. So what's yours?
Yes.
Where are you putting Salute of the Jugger?
In along with a couple of other South Australian films that we have done.
You'd go on the Cubis PD special.
Yes, so we've got Cargo, which is a post-apocalyptic sort of zombie.
Was that Cooper PD again?
That was Cooper PD, South Australia. Or not Cooper PD specifically, but very near there.
Bit near it, yeah.
Yeah, and you can tell by the lighting. It's very difficult to get the lighting other than that hard white, harsh light, and pitch black.
Yeah.
Which likewise is similar. And I liked these two on either side, because the Salute of the Jugger, quick, sharp, to the point, exciting, and then you've got like Cargo. It's got that slower, and it's got a different view of the post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
But even though Pitch Black technically isn't apocalyptic, it's kind of got a similar setting. They're marooned on this forgotten planet, which has got like an old prospectors town or settlement in there.
Yeah.
So I like that idea, just because it'd be if you're going to be doing your little themes and so forth, like this is a good way of doing it.
For me, I went more the action trilogy. So I think we looked at Revolt and Spectral. They're sort of big, alien action sci-fi films, and so I thought that shoving this one, if you watch those three, I think you could watch it actually in any order really, but if you watch Revolt, Salute and Spectral, it's a real action-packed, violent kind of sci-fi.
Get your teenage boy out.
That's right. You know, this. If you've got teenage boys, probably these three movies they'd have a lot of fun on a sleepover, wouldn't they?
I was more thinking that sometimes we have to look deeper than ourselves and find that teenage boy.
That's right. We do sometimes. A teenage dirtbag.
Yes.
And, you know, these three, I think, would just get that adrenaline rolling, and they're just good, fun action sci-fi, but they still have those thematic questions to it that we're talking about. This film's really about that class question, that class division structure, which is quite often post-apocalyptic. Oh, I've just not been able to say that bloody word all night. And I like it a lot.
Apocalyptic.
So. Yeah, that's right.
Post-apocalyptic.
Please forgive me out there, and then in your science, explain why I am not pronouncing that word properly. Sorry.
You're having a stroke.
That's right. Exactly. Oh, God. Getting old enough too.
Could be. Well, tell us, though, what you would think would make a good trilogy with this Salute of the Jugger, Blood of Heroes. Are there other... We haven't done any other sports games sort of movies, have we?
It's actually straight away made me really think of The Running Man.
The Running Man.
Oh, yes. That's a really good sci-fi one. You mentioned Hunger Games. I mean, is Hunger Games a bit of a sport film?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of is. Well, the first one is. The first one is largely about
There's also
winning
the
the Hunger Games.
Maze Runner movie
Maze
as well.
Runner,
That's sort of like a sport as well. They get stuck in a
maze. They've released the full series of that.
Yeah, that's all. Well,
this is actually a question we may have to consider, is that some of these movies are established stories, like the Hunger Games is it doesn't quite make sense to watch just number 2.
No, you have to watch all of them.
Alien and Aliens, you could just watch number 2.
Yeah.
In fact, I watched number 2 before I watched number 1. That wasn't a problem.
Me too.
And any number of these other films, Terminator 2, you could also watch number 2 without number 1. I didn't, but you could. But
these more series ones.
It's a bit harder. We might have to question how we do that.
Yeah, well, I think we probably just have to watch the 3 in a row or whatever.
Yeah, and just do 3 episodes.
Yeah.
On we go.
Anyway, let us know what you think. Should we do that? Or should we not?
Should we not?
All right, Surrey, what science are you going to talk about? I hope it's eyeballs. You promised gory earlier.
It's a bit brutal.
Okay, get into it.
But it's not eyeballs. So, Salute of the Jugger, it doesn't have a lot of sciencey science in there. You know, there's a few things there, and I was looking at things like subterranean cities. Very interesting. They've been used throughout history. I think I might have mentioned them before, but I don't know. But I decided to go with some interesting modelling of nuclear holocaust. So if we're going to have an apocalypse and it's going to be nuclear, and interestingly enough, this paper that I'm reading from, it was sort of thought about and put together March 2020, which, in fact, March 16, 2020, which was the day before I got my little email that said, please don't come into work. You're staying home for the next foreseeable future.
Yeah, right.
So I have a feeling they're going, yes, people, this nuclear apocalypse research and interesting information. And then it's like, we're kind of more interested about pandemics now. But nonetheless, I thought it'd be interesting. So
the doomsday clock.
Doomsday clock,
yes.
We're
closer to the doomsday
2
clock.
minutes to midnight. There's an Iron Maiden song about that. It's a very exciting song. It's very good. One of my favourites. But if you're going to look at apocalyptic scenarios, nuclear war is a genuine effort. Pandemics, like zombie plagues, we know that's not going to happen. Not zombie plagues. Pandemics... likewise, pandemics, there's very few scenarios where that would actually pan out. The most realistic one, I think, is something more along the lines of Children of Men, which we'll have to do at some point, but the basic premise of that being that for some reason, probably some sort of a disease, which nobody noticed, which is how they can spread so well, people stopped having children.
Yeah.
The whole of Earth's population became infertile. See, that could be possible. And then we just age out, basically, where our birth rate drops below our replacement rate, and then we just age out. So that's interesting. But going back to nuclear bombs, because let's face it, if you're filming in Cuba Pedy in apocalyptic science and you've got a couple of people from Mad Max, it's a nuclear war we're talking about here. Yeah, so we've got the Department of Homeland Security basically saying, well, what sort of effect would various bombs have? And you've got such things as, you're back in the 80s when Salute of the Jugger was done, it was the Cold War. That officially ended in 91, but it's not like Russia has really behaved themselves well.
No.
Since, I think it's mostly economic problems that have stopped them from being too bad until just recently, where they sort of got rich enough that they put someone in power who decided that it was a good idea to just like invade people. But anyway, that aside, back in the 80s, if US and Russia exchanged, they literally had thousands and thousands of nuclear warheads. You would genuinely get a doomsday scenario, like Orison. But what about we scale it back and look at just one warhead? It's like a kiloton, 10 kilotons, which is, that's a little baby of a thing. It's even that's a little bit smaller than what was dropped in World War II. So, it's easily one of these, just one warhead out of 10 that sit inside of an intercontinental ballistic missile. So 10 kilotons, that's 10,000 tons of TNT equivalent. I don't know how much 1 ton of TNT is, but I've seen one of those cubic meter bags of dirt that they transport around. That's about 1 ton. Yeah. So you can imagine that just being explosive and being set off. Like, I've seen those little firecrackers, and I'm just kind of going, okay. So you got 10,000 of those. Okay, so a 10,000 kiloton detonation. This guy, Richard L. Garwin, from Department of Homeland Security in America, he analysed a scenario in which, some group of people, terrorists or criminals or, freedom fighters or someone who somehow manages to get a 10 kiloton nuclear warhead. Because this is one of the problems we have, is that when the Soviet Union was dismantled, there's a number of nuclear warheads and so forth, which, for example, got left in ex-Soviet countries. And their governments are kind of a little bit
shaky,
over the place, and organised crime. There's concern that genuinely someone could be selling these things. It turns out so far no one has, because I think even the organised crime are looking at that going, no, I'm just not taking a 10 kiloton nuclear warhead. Sorry. So anyway, he had a look and he said, so if one of these guys, or girls, let's be fair, it could be a girl getting 10 kiloton nuclear warhead.
Could be just a douchebag as well.
Yeah, it could be. Like going to a dense major population. You can imagine in the middle of New York City, or one of these, like in Perth when they have grand finals or something, or Melbourne, with grand finals, something like that. Yeah. And detonate it at ground level. You end up with a lot of radioactive material because of all the buildings and stuff. The Hiroshima bomb detonated 500 odd meters, about 570 meters above the ground, or half a kilometer up. It's actually quite high up, which means it didn't create a lot of nuclear dust, because all the nuclear material got basically blown up in the air.
Right.
And you've only got whatever was in the bomb falling on the ground. But anyway, so a surface burst of a 10 kiloton explosive in a densely populated modern city, and this is what old Richard's saying, would be even more devastating than Hiroshima City in 1945, which was a 13 kiloton 1-3 nuclear explosion at an altitude of 570 meters. So that blast knocked down buildings, and the radiant heat from the explosions ignited fires and burned or incinerated people. But because the fireball did not touch the ground, there was essentially no radioactive material on the city. Prompt radiation, which is the radiation emitted within a few seconds of the explosion, added relatively little to the death toll, but it was pretty scary. So in fact, there's an interesting documentary about coming back to Hiroshima after some anniversary, and they talked to a woman who was 50 meters away from the bomb drop, like obviously 570 meters up in the air, but she was there. She was behind a building, and the bomb exploded 570 meters up in the air on the other side of this building. and they're talking to her like 50 years after or whatever it is. So yeah, it was pretty hefty, but not as bad as it could have been had they let it hit the ground.
Right.
So if it does explode on the ground, what we're looking at is invisible nuclear radiation. So this is the really serious stuff that when we talk about radiation, this is what people usually think about, as opposed to, like infrared and microwaves and stuff, which are relatively harmless unless in massive doses. So in the few microseconds, followed within milliseconds by thermal radiation from an expanding fireball. About 6 seconds later, the nearest potential survivors would feel an enormous blast and wind. So the fireball would, start some fires, and then you get things like broken gas mains and buildings catching on fire. There would also be a bit of a fallout plume, which, about half an hour after the initial explosion. So in the very first moments of the explosion, we've got this destructive overpressure, which is where, you've shifted so much air out of the way. When this bomb explodes, it basically pushes air out. So it's like a massive speaker. You think of your worst subwoofer you've heard as a car goes past and your windows rattle. Yeah. Okay. So that's overpressure. A 10 kiloton blast produces enough overpressure to knock down buildings and destroy an area out to 5.3 kilometers.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Massive.
That's...
If you're in a city.
Yeah, that's... that's going to be a really bad day. Yeah. Also, the other thing, not only does it knock down houses, but any loose objects or people become lethal missiles as they go flying through the place. I love the way he mentioned people. So yeah, you could be standing down the end of a street and it explodes, and the people and cars and things down that street are going to get thrown at
missiles,
you. Yeah, so you'd end up within a crater, and if it's sort of dry soil, soft dry rock, whatever, so you're not up in the Kimberleys where you've got iron ore just everywhere. Yeah, it would have a diameter of about 75 meters, depth about 17 meters. So yeah, that's not enormous, but that would certainly be. 75 meters. It's a block. My house is being built at the moment, and the empty block is 32 meters deep. And then we've got our backdoor neighbour who has a similar size block of about 32 meters. So it would be a crater that would, imagine from one street through to
like
houses' depths through to the next side. So yeah, pretty decent. The worst thing, though, of course, is the crater material would be highly radioactive, and hanging around there would kill anyone being exposed. It would, about half the people who hung around at the crater would die, and then the bomb debris mixed with the crater material, which would be thrown to a big mushroom cloud to the stratosphere. That's the thing. Over about half an hour or so, you'd get this 2 kilometer wide, 20 kilometer long plume following the winds. So here in Mandurah, if it exploded, it would go off towards up towards Thomas Road, Kwinana. Probably inland Byford. 20, but not 20 kilometres, wouldn't quite reach there, but it'd be up that way. So not too bad here, but you can imagine if you're talking Sydney or Melbourne, it'd be quite, that's all just radioactive dust, which anyone who was unlucky enough to get caught and breathe it in, well, yeah, it's leukemia and cancer time for them. So out to 500, so how big are these radiuses of death? So 590 metre radius. I'm trying to think of that in terms of, I don't know, that's about 1,800 foot, I guess, if you're
that's like a football oval.
590 metres, half a kilometre. Oh, that's even more than that. Half a kilometre would be, as I said, it'd be like 10 house blocks end to end. So it's best part of a suburb. Like you just say, let's call it half of a typical suburb. Yeah, that's considered a 50% blast casualty. Yeah, so they would kind of die pretty quickly. People out to 1.8 kilometres, so now we're talking some distance. Yeah, that's a bit over a mile. That's in a radius. That'd be 50% mortality from thermal burns. So that's the fireball basically catching you. 3rd-degree burns. You'd be okay if you were lucky enough to have been indoors and not near a window. at the time. He points out this problem, though, is that when you get an explosion like this, you get the bang, boom, everything shatters. Moments after that happens and sort of settles a bit, everyone will be out in the streets.
Yeah, everyone.
Because they go, what the hell's just happened? Where's my friends and family?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, you look for safety, right, as well.
The sad thing, of course, is that's when you get caught in the firestorm. Yeah. Because you get this fireball that is ignited a whole bunch of stuff, and you get these very strong inrushing winds because you've had a shockwave is literally force pushing dense air out. And so when that dies off, you've got a gap where there used to be air, but now there isn't. So all the winds come rushing in and just stoke these fires. You end up with a big firestorm. And Hiroshima, most of its devastation actually was because it burnt to the ground. And though we don't have as combustible buildings now, you'd still be looking at essentially everyone jumping out of their houses just in time to be caught in a firestorm. Isn't that wonderful? Not to mention that the toxic plume for about 30 minutes afterwards.
Lovely.
So I'm not sure. I didn't read into what you should do. Like, is it best to, in fact, hide and stick down in the deepest part of your house for like a couple of hours?
Bomb shelter, right? Bomb shelter.
And then get out?
Probably are.
Or do you, in fact, want to try and risk jumping out as soon as you can?
No, I don't think. I reckon bomb shelter style. You would.
Yeah, I think so as well. At least give it a couple of minutes afterwards so you can tell when the actual troubles have stopped.
I guess the hard thing, of course, is like if your house is on fire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can't stay in it.
I mean, the good thing is, of course, that these days houses, certainly modern houses, are built fairly fire resistant. Like in order to be built, they have to resist fire for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot to burn. Like it's all like, I mean, in a brick room covered with plaster, the carpet would probably burn. You don't want to be in here when it's on fire.
Roof beams.
But it's not like you're in a timber town like London was when it burnt down.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, just 10 kilotons, that wouldn't be enough to knock out things like cell towers and infrastructure. Like you could have a bit of a power outage because the sudden loss of power in that explosion area would destabilize, but it wouldn't be too bad. But that's just one 10 kilotons. So that's, if I'm looking there, it's like, I mean, that's out 1.8 kilometers. It's 2 kilometer radius, and there's destruction out to about 5 kilometer radius. That's just one of these things. One of these basic missiles that America has 10 of these warheads in it.
Wow.
And they distribute. So when they come in over a city, they split apart, about a kilometre apart, and they explode. So you'd be looking at something that would be possibly 5 times, like 20 odd kilometres across.
Yeah, wow.
I mean,
the destruction.
That would cover Perth well and truly.
Yeah.
And the greater surrounding areas.
Yeah.
And that's just one of these missiles, of which there are literally thousands.
Yep.
And the reason this was brought up, actually, not just because maybe a terrorist might get a hold of one of these warheads, but in, say, 98, I think it was Pakistan and India were doing nuclear tests. And they, at the time, had quite a bit of contention around Kashmir. They're still not too happy about it, but it's become a lesser concern these days.
Yeah.
And I think probably because they're just trying to battle the tech giants and pandemics. But the concern was that if they had a bit of a fight, what would happen?
Yeah.
And I was reading some other modelling about that where they say, what if 100 bombs went off in and around Pakistan, India? And I won't go into the full details of that, but that was an immediate death toll of about 20 million people, which, considering the population of Pakistan and India, I thought that was quite restrained. But that's absolutely devastating. The big problem with that was it's entirely possible just from that limited exchange of having a nuclear winter, which would drop our food supplies by between 10 and 20%, which would result in hardship and death for many millions of people everywhere in the world. So these things aren't localized things. You can't just have a localized nuclear exchange.
No.
Like if Russia decided to drop a couple of bombs on Ukraine and then NATO said, well, fine, we'll drop just a couple of bombs on Russia. that in itself will basically screw everyone over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even the war from Russia at the moment, like there's food shortages in Africa.
Oh, yeah.
There's mass food shortages. So
I paid unwittingly, because I didn't check the price before I bought it, $30 a kilo for snow peas. So I bought a little, because I buy a couple handfuls of snow peas to put in the kids' lunch.
Yeah.
And I got the thing and I paid it and I looked at it and it was like $8 worth of snow peas. I was just like, what?
Yes.
And I checked, it was $30 a kilo for snow peas. And I thought, oh, that's I feel very privileged. That's as expensive as lamb.
Yeah, you know, I did that about a month ago at the local supermarket. I was just grabbing a couple items, and it was just beans, and I only grab a handful, you know, to chuck in a stir fry. And I was getting the chicken, and I was getting, you know, some flavour and all this sort of stuff. And when I scanned that, and it was at the self check, I was like $8 something for a handful of beans, like a handful of beans. I was just like, oh, and I kind of looked at it and I was like, well, I'm not paying. The chicken was $7.
Yes.
Like for a family of 5, I'm spending $7 on the chicken to go in the stir fry, and the beans were over $7. It was $7 something. And so I called the girl over and said, I'm not having those beans. Yeah. Like, I'm not paying that, you know, like, but it's easy to get caught out.
I had actually, because
you've already paid and you moved on.
I'm using that pay and go, shop and go, whatever it's called.
Okay.
I scan and go. Because I've got my card and everything set up, I just hit pay now. Ooh, $30 a kilo. Like you said, you know, chicken will set you back for, I don't know what, maybe $12 to $16 a kilo at most. And yeah.
Yeah.
So I haven't bought snow peas since.
Yeah.
Because I thought I'd rather buy steak.
Yes.
Which also costs about $30 a kilo.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, no, it's really interesting. So let us know what you thought about the science that's maybe been delved up in Salute of the Jugger. Surrey talking about, you know, the doomsday clock, possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly. And look, we are living in a bit of, you know, there's a lot of talk about the whole China's military capability with Taiwan at the moment. And, you know, they've been doing some military exercises, which they haven't done for years. And I did hear tonight that they're 5 years away from US parity of military capability. So, yeah, you know, it's a different time, isn't it? Maybe that will be the next big, you know, war possibility, I suppose. Yeah. I think they will reclaim Taiwan soon. So it just depends if the world wants to stand up for Taiwan.
Here's a bit of a hot take from me. Just give it up, China. It's okay.
What did you think about Salute of the Jugger? Have you seen it before? Did we hit the right kind of skull-cracking points tonight of this narrative? Let us know on Facebook and Instagram and all the other places that you can find us, TikTok and on our website. Get cracking on your film for the film festival round 2. Spacebrains is back, so get checking on that and locking the date into your diary and all those sorts of things.
June 17th.
Okay, there you go. Sorry's got the date.
So they're June 17th, yes.
Okay, there we go. But check an eye out. We'll keep reminding you, but get onto it. And let us know what you thought about the episode tonight. If you listen on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, give us a 5-star rating or leave a review. And if you don't like the show, tell us. Tell us why.
We want to make it better.
We do. We keep trying to make it better. So let us know what you'd like us to do, like even what movie we should look at. But Surrey has chosen the next movie. Yes. I've not seen this one, so I look forward. It's much more modern than Salute of the Jugger, as in it came out in 2021. What are we looking at?
Infinitum.
There we go.
I believe that's it. It's not infinitum, infinitium, but infinitum.
You just sounded more Australian than you've ever sounded on this show,
you bro.
I think. Not bro. Yeah, bro. That's not Australian. Come on.
Oh,
mate.
yeah, bro.
Yeah,
of course
mate.
it is, eh?
No, you've been in New Zealand.
Yeah, I know, but all the best Australians are actually
just
from New
trying
Zealand.
to offend another race, aren't you? Sorry.
Well, Taika Waititi, he's a great Australian. He's a great Australian, right up there with like Russell Crowe and Sam Neill and
Nicole Kidman,
Tim Finn,
Olivia Newton-John as well, who just sadly passed away.
Yeah,
I really realised she's not Australian at all. So.
Yeah, I told you all the best Australians and New Zealanders. Okay, so Infinitum, it's got Gandalf in it, so it should be pretty good.
Okay, check you next time.
See ya.
Bye.